I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. Today, we're going to continue on with our massive upgrade of the Cayman suspension by replacing all three rear control arms and getting work out in the process. Oh, this is kind of heavy. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. So we are approaching the end of this massive project to basically completely revamp the entire suspension of the Cayman into something that's much more track capable. And if you haven't seen my initial episode where I laid out the plan and all the parts that I'm getting and what an amazing deal I got on a lot of those parts, I'll give you a link up in this corner here. You can go check that out and see where we're going with all this. I've also finished up the front suspension, and there are several episodes. Go check out. I'll give you a link to, I think I can give you a link to a playlist up there. I'll give you that of everything we've done so far. And if that doesn't work, there'll be a link in the video description down below. As you can see, I've already done quite a bit in getting ready to replace these three control arms. I have removed the brake calipers and hung them up here on the side off some copper wire that I keep around for that purpose. I also removed the brake calipers and the dust shield that goes on here. And just to get those out of the way, they're pretty heavy. And as you can see, I have removed the strut, and we've already upgraded that in a previous episode. Just to clarify, this is not the strut you see here. This is actually the axle shaft. What I did was I took and used some more copper wire in the holes that are up in the top where the strut goes, and I used that to kind of hang this entire thing to lift it up and get it out of my way. Unlike the front suspension, I can't just take this and set it aside because it's connected by this cable for the emergency brake or parking brake, and I'm not sure that it can even be taken apart easily, but it will be a big pain, and so this is just easier to hang it up out of the way. In my previous episode where I showed how to remove the struts, I also went ahead and removed the lower control arm, the one here in the middle. And you can go check that episode out if you need to know how to do that. The other two, the rear toe control arm and the rear trailing arm, are both still in place, and I'll show you how to get those out of there. I've also already removed the lower control arm from the wheel carrier, and those are joined by a ball joint that's pretty tough to get apart sometimes. Normally, I'm able to just hammer it apart, maybe by applying a little heat to the wheel carrier. But in this case, my normal method didn't work. And I've got like a half a dozen different ball joint separators, but the way that that joint is situated in the wheel carrier, right next to the axle shaft, I can't use any of those ball joint separators. And so I had to resort to using one of these ball joint separator forks. Normally, I do not like using these forks because, as in this case, it jams in there and it just completely tears up the rubber boot that's on that ball joint. And so now it's trash. I'd have to replace it. Although off the top of my head, I'm not even sure if it can be replaced. However, I'm replacing the entire arm, so I don't really care about having torn up that boot. So this is okay. At this point, all the hard work is really done. I'm just going to take and lift the car all the way up and move the camera up under the car so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to start off with the rear toe control. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to make a mark here on this eccentric bolt and on the frame so that I know what it was originally set to. And the reason to do this is I want to be able to put this eccentric bolt back in approximately the same position. It's eccentric because as you turn this bolt, it moves this arm in and out. So I want to get it back to approximately where it was, and then set the length of the adjustable toe control arm to approximately the same length. That means I end up with approximately the same toe setting. It's a good starting point for setting the toe. Even if I could put it to exactly what it currently is, it doesn't matter, because keep in mind that at least on the Cayman and a lot of other cars, when you adjust the camber, you also affect the toe out. So you do the camber and then you do the toe in or toe out, or what you adjust the toe, which is almost always toe in. The head on this eccentric bolt is a 19 millimeter. The nut on the other end is an 18 millimeter. So I'm gonna put a breaker bar with that 19 millimeter socket, and I'm gonna arrange it so that when I start trying to break the nut loose, if this rotates, it'll come up here and it'll rest against the exhaust pipe there and keep it from moving. And then I'll use the breaker bar on the nut to actually get this loose. Okay, it's actually just coming loose. It's not really turning yet. So, okay, that's loose. I'm going to switch over to using a ratchet. Very tight space here. I can't get much of a swing. I can start working both of these against each other. Got that? Now you're going to have to get this out of here, and needs a little bit of encouragement from the other side. And you do have to rotate this into the right position, because you can see that this big flange here is going to hit this bracket. Turn this into the right position. And it does not want to come out of there. There, finally. Now this is the other side where the nut goes on. Do be aware that this washer has a little nub on it that goes into this slot that's in the side of the bolt, and you can see a little more clearly there, I think, the way this thing is shaped to keep this other like marked washer in sync with the position of the bolt. And now we got the bolt out, the toe control arm comes right out. So as I was saying before, I've used the adjustable section to get this toe rod to approximately the same length as the old one. And actually, from experience, I know that I need to actually set it a little longer because I'm going to be increasing the camber. But let's go ahead. And on these Taretts, I believe these are Tarett. Be careful, because these pieces here do come loose out of that center joint, that ball. Let me just work this in, which is also a quite tight fit. Put the cable, or the eccentric bolt back in. Again, you're rotating it around to the right position to get past this this bracket here. A smidge of encouragement. Let me put the other washer back on and the nut. And we'll just leave that loose for now, and we'll tighten this up as part of our final assembly when we're putting everything back together. And just in case I forget to say it later, this is going to get torqued, or the nut's going to get torqued to 56 foot-pounds. Okay, it took a lot of finagling to get the camera in a spot where I can actually show you this bolt. Here's the lateral control arm right there coming up, and right there, that's the bolt that we need to remove. It's an 18 millimeter bolt. Luckily, you can just come up through here with a socket and extension and get it on there. But it goes through, and I just can't get you a view of this. There is a stamped steel frame member up there. The bolt goes through that frame member, and then there's a nut on top of it, which gave me fits the first time I took one of these apart, because I didn't realize that that nut up there is a captive nut. There's some kind of a clip or something that's holding it in place. I spent probably 20 minutes finagling a wrench and a socket up in there. I can't remember if it's a wrench or socket, something up in there to hold it, just to discover I actually didn't need to. Yeah, something to be aware of is that this bolt is not vertical. So if you come in straight with your socket, you're not going to get a good hold of it. It's going to keep popping off. You have to tilt the bottom of your extension toward the front of the car, and that's going to get you good and tight on that bolt where you can break it loose. And this is, if I recall correctly, 118 foot-pounds. So it takes some effort to get this thing off or get it started. All right. There we go. Now let's switch over to an impact wrench. Finagle our new adjustable lateral arm in here. Slide the bolt up in place. This takes a little bit of wiggling to get this to work. So now let's put in the lower control arm. And I've already assembled the electronic bracket here that connects to the headlight leveling system. If you don't have the self-leveling headlights, you won't need this at all. And I'm not overly thrilled with the way this thing is designed. I don't like the fact that it doesn't clear the boot. It's going to rub on that boot. I'm not sure how that's going to hold up long term. I don't like the fact that it uses the adjustment bolts to hold it in place, because every time you have to adjust this, which granted is not going to be that often, but you end up having to loosen all this and then readjust it again. Plus the fact that this little piece of metal, $75. Okay, rant over. So we just insert this, and then we put in the bolt, and like the toe arm bolt, the bolt head part goes to the rear of the car, goes through the spherical monoball bushing, and again, you have to rotate this into the right position for it to clear this bracket piece here. Then on the back side, or the front side, make sure you put the washer on with the little markings outward so they can be seen, and of course it's going to slide on the same way with that little nub going into the slot that's in the bolt. And then the nut goes on, and as with other things, I'm going to leave torquing this to final value until we do our final assembly, because having it loose like this makes it much easier to finagle everything together. Okay, we've got our new control arms all installed, albeit not attached to the wheel carrier or tightened final torque values. And the reason for that is we're going to stop right here, and in the next episode, we're going to install the new rear anti-sway bar, and then we'll come back for one final episode where we're going to tie all the pieces together, get everything assembled, get the strut back in, and torque everything to final value. Now, before you go down there, smack that thumbs up button, give me a like on this video, let YouTube know that you enjoyed this and you found it valuable. And while you're down there, check out that big red subscribe button. if you are not one of my subscribers, go ahead and click that. Become a subscriber to the channel. It doesn't cost anything. It's completely free. Now, if you are one of my subscribers, go down there, check it out. Make sure that it's gray, because if it's red and shiny, that means you've been unsubscribed, which happens more often than you think. Go ahead, click it, resubscribe to the channel. And then finally, if you want to keep up with all the stuff that I'm doing to the Cayman, including some truly cool new things that I'm going to be installing and getting ready for my next track day, go click on that bell icon. That turns on notifications for this channel, and that way YouTube will let you know every time that I post something new from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.